We all want power. Whether we admit it or not, there's a part of us that craves influence, clarity, strength, and that deep, unshakable sense that we are truly in control of our lives. But for those who are chosen, those rare souls marked by something higher, the path to power is not paved with comfort. It doesn't come packaged in wealth, status, or recognition. It comes through fire. It comes through loss. It comes through pain so personal and raw that it erodes everything you thought you were until all that's left is something ancient, something eternal, something real. You see, being chosen isn't a badge. It's not something you show off. It's not glamorous. It's not even something most people would want if they knew the cost. Because when you are chosen, the universe begins to remove everything that is not aligned with your divine identity, and that removal process, it feels like destruction. It feels like betrayal. It feels like being stripped naked in front of the mirror of your soul and seeing not the polished version of you, but the wounded child, the insecure wanderer, the masked pretender. The truth is, before God grants you power, He breaks your illusions. And that breaking, that's the price. That's the first cost. When I first began to sense that I was being pulled into something deeper, I thought it would feel special. I thought I'd be rewarded with clarity and peace, maybe even a little magic. But what actually happened was the complete opposite. I started losing friends. People I loved started distancing themselves. Old habits stopped satisfying me. My emotions became unpredictable. My sleep was disrupted. My dreams intensified. It felt like I was unraveling. And I was. But that unraveling wasn't punishment, it was preparation. I was being emptied to be filled. I was being cut to be carved into something greater. If you're watching this right now, maybe you're in that space. Maybe you've been asking, why is everything falling apart? Maybe you've been praying for answers and getting silence. Maybe you've been searching for meaning and finding only more questions. If that's you, let me tell you something that could change your life. Confusion is often the first step in divine alignment. When God chooses you, He doesn't give you a clear map. He gives you sensitivity, increased awareness, heightened responsibility, and above all, tests. Because before great power is given, great purification must take place. When you are chosen, your life becomes a mirror. Everything you've ignored begins to surface. Your traumas, your insecurities, your ego. Not because you're failing, but because you're being refined. The fire you feel isn't meant to destroy you, it's meant to reveal you. But here's the thing. Power doesn't come from knowledge alone. It comes from embodied wisdom. And wisdom is forged in experience. That's why chosen ones often go through things others don't. We feel more. We lose more. We see what others miss. And because of that, we are forced to grow faster, deeper, stronger. But what is power, really? Is it control? Is it dominance? No. True spiritual power is presence. It's the ability to hold your center when everything around you is chaos. It's the ability to see through the illusion of the world and still choose compassion. It's the ability to discern truth beyond appearances and to live from that place without needing validation. That kind of power can't be taught in books. It can't be inherited through lineage. It can't be bought. It must be earned through sacrifice, through surrender, through the fire of transformation. One of the hardest truths I had to learn was that when you are chosen, your suffering is not just personal, it's generational. You are often chosen to break cycles that have existed in your family for decades, even centuries. You may be the first to question, to heal, to rise. You may be the one who carries the weight no one else could carry. And yes, it feels unfair. Yes, it feels lonely. But that weight, that burden, it's also your initiation. It's the rite of passage into the version of you that your soul came here to become. So many people crave the rewards of being chosen, but they don't understand the cost. They want the vision without the loneliness. They want the wisdom without the wounds. They want the light without the shadow. But the truth is, you can't separate them. Power, Real power comes from integration, from embracing every part of yourself, the divine and the damaged, from owning your past without being defined by it, from standing in your truth even when your voice shakes, even when no one claps, even when you have to walk alone. Let me ask you this: what are you willing to lose to become who you were born to be? Are you willing to lose comfort, approval, familiarity? Because the path of the chosen is not about gaining the world, it's about gaining your soul. And sometimes that means letting go of everything that isn't aligned with it. You may not realize it now, but the struggle you're in is shaping you for a future you can't yet see. The breakdowns, the rejections, the silent seasons, they are not signs that you are forgotten. They are signs that you are being rebuilt. You are being chosen not just to rise, but to lead. Not just to heal yourself, but to heal others. Not just to gain power, but to embody it with humility, compassion, and wisdom. And that begins here. It begins now, with your willingness to trust the process, to stay open in the fire, to keep walking even when the road disappears beneath your feet.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
There's a moment in every chosen one's life when the silence becomes deafening, when the phone stops ringing, when the friends stop checking in, when the love you used to feel from others slowly fades into something cold and unrecognizable. It doesn't happen all at once, it creeps in. You wake up one day and realize, I'm alone, not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, energetically. And if you're not prepared for it, that isolation can feel like abandonment. But what if I told you it isn't punishment? What if I told you that the silence is sacred? That the space you're in right now, this deep, echoing solitude, is actually a divine contract between your soul and the source? The truth is, isolation is not optional for the chosen. It's a clause in the spiritual agreement you made before your soul entered this world. You didn't come here to blend in. You didn't come here to be surrounded by noise. You came here to remember. And remembrance requires separation. Because you can't hear God clearly when you're drowning in everyone else's noise. You can't step into your power when you're constantly adapting to keep people comfortable. The chosen one must first be removed from environments, from relationships, from routines so they can be rewired. I remember the moment it happened to me. It wasn't dramatic. There was no big fallout. People just drifted, one by one. Plans fell through. Texts went unanswered. And for a while I thought I had done something wrong. I questioned myself constantly. Was I too much? Too intense? Too different? But the more I sat with the silence, the more I began to feel something underneath the loneliness. A quiet presence, a deeper voice, a gentle nudge. That's when I realized I wasn't being abandoned, I was being called. Pulled inward, pulled upward, pulled home. You see, isolation is where the chosen one is purified. It's where the ego dies. It's where the masks fall off. When there's no one around to impress, you stop performing. When there's no crowd to validate you, you start listening to your inner voice. And that voice, that's the one that leads you to your real power. But to follow it, you must be willing to lose what you thought you needed. You must be willing to sit in the void long enough to realize that the void is actually full of the guidance, the wisdom, the downloads that are meant only for you. Most people run from this phase. They jump into distractions. They chase relationships. They numb the silence with noise. But the chosen one doesn't get that luxury. When you try to return to what God has removed, it will no longer feel right. The old friends won't resonate. The old habits will feel heavy. The old places will drain you. That's because your frequency has changed. You're not who you used to be. And that's not a loss, it's proof that the rewiring is working. But here's the challenge. Isolation doesn't come with a timeline. You don't know how long it will last. You don't know what's coming next. And that uncertainty, it's part of the test. Can you trust the process even when you don't understand it? Can you sit in the silence long enough to hear what your soul has been trying to say all along? Let me ask you something. What if the isolation wasn't a pause in your life but the beginning of your real life? What if this is where your mission actually begins? In this space you are being prepared. Your sensitivity is being sharpened. Your discernment is being activated. You're learning how to rely on something deeper than logic, intuition, spirit, presence. You're learning how to move without needing applause, how to lead without needing followers, how to be without needing to be seen. And yes, it's hard, because we are wired to belong. We are wired for connection. But the chosen one must first learn to connect with Source before they can truly connect with others. Otherwise, every relationship becomes a distraction. Every interaction becomes a performance. And your power gets diluted in the process. So if you're in that place right now, if the silence feels unbearable, if the loneliness feels like a weight you can't carry, know this: you are not being punished. You are being positioned. You are being hollowed out so you can be filled with something greater. You are being stripped of what's false so you can live from what's true. This is the sacred contract. And when you honor it, when you stay in the solitude long enough to meet yourself on the other side, you emerge with something the world can't give and the world can't take away. You emerge with presence, with truth, with power. There is a silent moment in the life of every chosen one when the veil lifts and you see the world not as it has been presented, but as it truly is. This moment doesn't come with celebration. It doesn't come with applause or comfort. It comes with a quiet, devastating clarity. You begin to see through people, through systems, through yourself, and what you see is not always beautiful. In fact, it's often heartbreaking. But this is the next price of power: sight, real sight, deep spiritual perception, the kind of vision that cannot be unseen once it's known. When you are chosen, you are gifted with sight beyond the physical. You start to feel energy when no one speaks. You hear the truth behind people's words. You sense the lies hidden in smiles. You notice the cracks in structures others still call sacred. You begin to see the puppet strings in relationships, in culture, in religion, in power itself. And with this sight comes a deep and growing discomfort, because you can no longer participate in illusions. You can't unknow what you've seen. You can't go back to sleep. This is the part no one talks about. The pain of awakening, the grief of clarity, the loneliness of seeing what others refuse to acknowledge. Because sight sets you apart. It isolates you in a new way. You try to speak truth, but people call you intense. You try to warn others, but they say you're paranoid. You try to show them the bigger picture, but they laugh, change the topic, or worse, turn against you. The irony is, the more truth you see, the less people want to hear you. And so, you learn something difficult but crucial. Not everyone is ready to see. And that's the burden. You walk through life holding revelations that could free people, but most people are still addicted to their cages. You carry ancient wisdom that could heal generations, but the ones closest to you may reject it. You begin to realize that truth is not just light, it's fire. It purifies, yes, but it also burns, and not everyone is ready to be scorched. So what do you do with this sight? What do you do when you see the manipulation in a system everyone worships? What do you do when you see the fear behind someone's anger, the insecurity behind their arrogance, the trauma beneath their mask and they still deny it? What do you do when you can see exactly how someone is self-destructing, but they aren't ready to change? You let go. That's the next lesson on this path. You cannot save those who are not ready. You cannot force awakening. You cannot push someone to see what their soul is not yet prepared to confront. And trying to do so will only drain your energy and diminish your light. The chosen one must learn the way of detachment, not apathy, not coldness, but compassionate distance, the kind where you love without controlling, where you witness without interfering, where you offer truth like a seed but let it grow in its own time. This ability to hold truth without demanding recognition is a form of spiritual maturity. It's what separates the arrogant from the awakened. The ego wants to be right. The soul wants to be aligned. The ego wants applause. The soul wants peace. And peace only comes when you accept that not everyone is meant to walk with you, believe you, or even understand you. But here's the paradox. The deeper you see, the more humble you become. Real vision doesn't inflate you, it humbles you. You realize how little you truly know. You begin to see the interconnectedness of everything, the patterns, the divine timing, to sacred chase. And in that humility you find power, a quiet, steady power that doesn't need to shout or prove itself. A power rooted in truth, not performance. And with that power comes responsibility. You begin to understand why you had to be isolated, why you had to be broken, why you had to lose so much. Because only someone who has walked through the fire can speak with the authority of lived truth. Only someone who has lost everything false can hold what is real. And now that you see, you are responsible for staying clear. You are responsible for living in alignment, not perfection, but truthfulness. So I ask you, can you handle the cost of clarity? Can you carry the burden of seeing and still choose love? Can you witness the darkness and still be the light? Because the cost of sight is that you will never again be blind. You will never again be able to pretend. But the gift of Saito, the gift is that you become unshakable. You become a guide, a mirror, a lighthouse, not because you are better, but because you've been willing to see what others won't. And that sight, that vision, that is the power that changes everything. There comes a moment in every chosen one's journey when the universe, after stripping you, refining you, isolating you, and awakening you, finally begins to give you everything. The doors that were once shut fly open. Opportunities appear out of nowhere. People who once ignored you now seek your voice. Resources, influence, recognition, it all begins to flow. And at first, it feels like the reward you've been waiting for. Finally, after the pain, the silence, the confusion, you are seen. You are heard. You are rising. But this is where the most dangerous test begins. Because the final test is not in your suffering, it's in your success. You see, when you were broken, it was easy to remember God, easy to pray, easy to stay humble, because you had nothing else to lean on. But now you have options. Now you have choices. Now you have the power to shape your world. And the question becomes, will you remain rooted in who you are, or will you forget the reason you were chosen in the first place? This is the part no one warns you about. The seduction of success, the subtle shift from presence to performance, from integrity to image, from mission to maintenance. The very power you prayed for can become the trap that pulls you away from your soul. Because now the ego returns quietly, confidently, dressed in spiritual language and good intentions. It whispers things like, "You deserve this. You've earned this. You don't need to go that deep anymore. You've already done the work." And if you're not vigilant, you start to believe it. But the truth is, the higher you rise, the deeper you must go. The more power you're trusted with, the more anchored in truth you must become. Because now people are watching, listening, following. And whether you realize it or not, your energy becomes a blueprint for others. Your integrity becomes a compass. Your alignment becomes a silent transmission. And if you lose your center, if you forget who you are, you don't just lose yourself, you mislead others who are still finding their way. This is why the universe tests us with abundance, not to punish, but to reveal. Because everything you thought you healed will resurface when you have something to lose. Everything you claim to surrender will be tested when you have the power to take. Everything you said you believed will be measured against your actions when no one is watching. This is not to shame you, it's to refine you. Because the chosen one is not just called to rise, they are called to remain. So how do you pass the final test? You stay anchored. You keep your rituals sacred. You stay honest with yourself. You surround yourself with people who challenge your ego, not feed it. You protect your solitude even when the world wants your attention. You give without performing. You serve without seeking validation. You remember that you are not the source, you are the vessel. And that everything you've been given is not just for you, but for those you are meant to lift. Let me ask you something deeply personal. If you gained the whole world but lost your soul's alignment, would it be worth it? Because this is the real price of power. Not just the suffering it took to get here, but the integrity it takes to carry it well. To hold it without being held hostage by it. To use it without being used by it. When the universe gives you everything, it's not to reward your ego, it's to reveal your essence. And in that moment, you must choose. Will you serve the power, or will you serve the truth? Will you protect your image, or will you protect your mission? Will you remember the fire that forged you, or will you become another voice lost in the noise? If you are truly chosen, you will know the answer. Because chosen ones don't just rise, they return again and again to the sacred center, to the silence, to the source. And from that place they lead not with force, not with fame, but with frequency. Quiet, clear, undeniable. That is the final price, and the ultimate freedom.